TDA, the Russo-Canadian Democratic Alliance.
Yes, thank you, Madam Commissioner. Can I please ask the court reporter to please pull up Can Doc 38, please? So this is the institutional report of the Prime Minister's Office for Stage 2. Do you recognize the document?
Yes.
I'd like to walk us through some meetings the Prime Minister had with various leaders or head of states. It starts at page 5 approximately. Yes, so there, and I'll address specifically Russian interference in our democratic processes. We see a meeting on the 1st, on January 19, 2021, if we can scroll down a little bit. Yes, the Prime Minister raised threats to democracy, including those arising from technology, social media, and artificial intelligence. He mentioned China and Russia as actors seeking to undermine and destabilize democracies and thus the international order. And that was with the Prime Minister Andersson of Sweden. We can scroll down to page 6, please. There was a meeting as well, that was the G7 summit in Caribbean Bay in the UK on June 2021, where leaders reaffirmed their call on Russia to stop its destabilizing behavior and malign activities, including its interference in other countries' democratic systems, and to fulfill its international human rights obligations and commitments. I'll scroll down again, please, to page 7. So on April 4th, there was a telephone call with Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, and it says, in 2022, it says that two leaders discussed Russian disinformation and the possibility of diplomatic responses. Right after that, the Prime Minister raised with Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong of Singapore the circulation of Russian disinformation in their respective countries on May 30, 2022. And then there was this G7 summit, again, talking about Russian interference in our democratic systems, and leaders calling to halt the democratic backsliding. We can continue to scroll down. It goes all the way to 2024. There was the G7 summit in Japan in 2023, and then in 2024, June 2024, there was a telephone call with the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Again, the Prime Minister mentioned foreign interference by China, Russia, and India in Canadian democratic processes. So, I'm sorry to walk you through this chronology, but can we say that Russian interference in Canada's democratic processes is a significant concern for the Prime Minister?
Yes, I think we can, and I think it's important to note that upon coming into government after the 2015 election, it was already a significant concern for our allies, and certainly events since, including the invasion of Ukraine, have only exacerbated the concern.
And between the 2015 election and the invasion of Ukraine, it was an ongoing concern as well.
I think it was a concern for allies. There was widespread reporting about interference in other democratic processes, and yes, it's been a concern.
And I'm trying to focus on Canada specifically. Was there any evidence of these activities in Canada's democratic processes and institutions specifically?
I think we can speak more broadly about concern about disinformation and Russia's activities. Otherwise, I would refer to you to the topical summary that's been provided.
Okay, so you cannot provide us with unclassified information other than the topical summary about Russian interference during the last...
In this setting, I would be comfortable referring to the conclusions that are provided in that unclassified report.
Okay. Can you provide information about since when has Russia been engaged in foreign interference activities in Canada?
Again, I would refer you to the summary.
Can you talk about the impact of Russian interference on Canadians?
I will say, I think I would speak generally to say, without being in a position to quantify impact, that Russia's behavior, particularly as it is accelerated in recent years, is of great concern. I think I would point you in particular, as a most recent example, to the evidence that's been provided by the United States, and we've been clear that we are working with them on Russian attempts through RT, Russia Today, to engage in a disinformation process that is intended to affect Western democracies. And so there is great concern, and that has an impact on the information that Canadians receive, particularly through the U.S. media ecosystem.
And in the PMO's opinion, what was the intent behind this disinformation campaign you just mentioned with the tenant media operation?
I think generally speaking, Russia has an interest in undermining and destabilizing democracies, Canada, but our like-minded allies as well, as part of its broader attempt to achieve its geopolitical gains and geopolitical aims. And that's particularly true in light of its illegal, unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine and the strong resistance and opposition that has been expressed by Canada and the actions taken by Canada and our partners. So it is an attempt to undermine our societies and our democracy because they see us as pushing back on their unacceptable and illegal behavior.
Thank you. And I'd like to pull CAN 23184, please. This is the summary report of CSIS. Can we just go up a little bit more just to see the first page? Yes, so this is the 2023 Threat Assessment Summary Report from CSIS. Can you go at page 5, please? There's a mention that we can zoom in a little bit more just so that witness can read the document. There's a mention here about the Russian intelligence services relying primarily on diplomatic mission-based personnel to carry out intelligence and foreign interference activities in Canada. Are you aware of the role of Russian diplomats in carrying intelligence and foreign interference activities in Canada?
Given this setting, and I want to be very careful about respect for intelligence, I'm not sure that I can offer independent information beyond the document that's raised. Okay.
I'm going to offer you public information that the director of MI5, Ken McCallum, stated last week, actually. He said over 750 Russian diplomats have been expelled from Europe since Putin invaded, the great majority of them spies. This goes well beyond all historical precedent and has put a big dent in the Russian intelligence services' ability to cause damage in the West. My question is, why have we not expelled a single Russian diplomat since 2018?
So I can speak to elements of this that are public in the sense that Canada in previous years have taken a number of steps, including expelling Russian diplomats. I believe, but would have to check, the most recent was in relation to the poisoning in Salisbury, UK. And at that point, we had actually gone further than many of our partners in terms of reducing the diplomatic presence of the Russian Federation in Canada. At that time, we were very clear that some of those diplomats were indeed engaging in undeclared activities that we found unacceptable. I believe the foreign minister has since spoken to this, that we having taken that series of measures, we are now in face of retaliation as well. Both presences are down to a minimal diplomatic presence.
And there's no way to further reduce the diplomatic presence of Russian conducting intelligence and foreign interference activities in Canada?
Speaking generally, it is possible to further reduce the presence. The foreign minister has spoken of in the current geopolitical context, the imperative that there is some remaining diplomatic engagement with the Russian Federation. Diplomacy is such that you don't only get to engage with your friends. And to be clear, we are deeply opposed to Russia's actions geopolitically. But in a moment when we are dealing with disinformation, we're dealing with their actions in Ukraine, it is important that we're also able to express that directly to the Russian Federation. And it's a part of diplomacy in an uncertain and challenging world.
Thank you. When you talk about engagement, and this will be my last question, is it surprising to you to learn that we haven't had a meeting with the Russian embassy about the tenant media operation that targeted our democracy as early as September of this year?
I'm not sure I can speak to those specific details. I would say that we have been very public, including in a public statement issued by a minister about our strong opposition to the behavior that we've seen from the Russian Federation. I think there is absolutely no lack of clarity in Moscow or in the Russian embassy in Ottawa about our beliefs about any of their behaviors, which are wholly unacceptable.
Thank you. I'm out of time, but I thank you for your
Thank you.
answers. Merci.
Council.